Hi guys, so today I want to talk a bit about Edison format and why Edison format isn't really something for me, which kind of pains me to say because I really tried to enjoy the format. I've played it like lots on DB, but like about 6 months ago I think I came to the decision that yeah, I just don't enjoy it really, which is why I basically stopped playing the format and I want to bring all of the thoughts I have on the format together in like one ramble, I guess, and yeah, discuss a bit about the format. What I don't want to say with this that the format is like maybe bad for everybody in general or like that the format is uncompetitive, because I do not think that this is true. But really personally for me, I just don't get as much enjoyment out of Edison format as like out of other retro formats, which I'm therefore like playing more. And I want to discuss a couple of those reasons why I think I'm not enjoying the format that much. So I think one of the things which really like kind of strikes me wrong are quote unquote the floodgates in the format. Like I think cards like Royal Oppression are annoying to deal with. Vanity's Fiend, which you can cite in Quick Draw and so on. I think that something like Christia and Fairies is really annoying, and I've really like a distaste against the do block in Frogs. In general, like floodgates exist in basically every format, so it's like nothing too special that there are floodgates, and there are always outs for floodgates. Like you have your MST, your Heavy Storm, you have your Dust Tornadoes, you can cite Mobius against like Royal Oppression, you have like stuff playing around it with like Treeborn Frog, which just comes back the entire time, or Value. Like, yeah, this is true, you can cite, I guess, Smashing Grounds, or if you have the Tribute fodder, you can cite something like Caius to get rid of Vanity's Fiend, or your Christian and so on, and Dublock has also, like, a bunch of removal stuff, which out. This is, like, not the point, but in general, I just often have had the feeling when I played the format that my opponent slams down one of these floodgates. Maybe somewhere I have maybe a Book of Moon, which kind of outs the Duplock or something like that. And I'm just looking at my hand and I'm just passing turn after turn after turn because I cannot deal with it. And yeah, I just didn't like those games. And it happened like a bit too often to me personally. I'm not sure why I think like Edison there are like more floodgates compared to other formats. I mean, obviously there are formats where like everybody is running floodgate. Like you had the virtual world format where everybody was running calamities, and then basically you had always a floodgate in your face. And that is not the case in Edison, obviously. But there are just so many different floodgates in Edison which are commonly played that yeah, I just don't like this as type of gameplay. That the opponent you have to basically always build your deck around multiple floodgates in the format so your deck doesn't lose or hard lose to any one of those and side enough outs to them. I'm not saying that this style of gameplay is uncompetitive or that is uninteresting, because from a deck building point of view it's like really cool, I guess. But I think like straight being inside a game, it's not that enjoyable, at least to me personally. I think another thing I kind of dislike like the extra deck in general in Edison. Like to give some context, I started playing in 2016. And when I started in 2016, synchros were like kind of weird. Xyz were the big thing. Pendulums was another thing, and Links like came out a couple of months later. And like going back to just a synchro format on the one hand is cool, but I think it's just weird how hard it is to like really get out your synchro monsters. Like not that it is impossible, like you can get out multiple synchro monsters, obviously via turbo and so on. But I think like many of the tuners feel kind of awkward in the format. Like yeah, you have good tuners, obviously, like something like Plague is good, But you also have lots of like really weird tuners, I feel, in the format. Some decks playing Copy Plant. If you have like a plant engine, it's just a card I don't want to have in my deck. And it feels like weird to have to play these really, really weird tuners. I think, like in fairies, when you're using the heralds to synchro, like it kind of feels weird to me to like use these awkward cards in the main deck to go for your synchro monsters. And then I also feel like the synchro pool in Edison is like kind of weird. Like you have the bangers for level 6s with Go Your Guardian, obviously, and your Brioneck. But then I think the other the others sometimes like feel just really, really awkward. Like I think it's insane that you're playing like Archfiend, like the level 8 one, in a real deck. It just feels like a card which doesn't do anything except like having 3000 attack. Like yeah, it has some application, but in general it's like such a niche card that I just don't like seeing a weird card like that in the deck list. And yeah, just in general, how hard it is usually to access like the synchro monsters using suboptimal cards from your main deck. It's just something I want to like see my hand, and no matter what, I want to be able like to go into some extra deck monsters. Like this is a thing why I like really like Xyz, for instance, because they are just so accessible, and you do not have like to draw a weird card from your main deck. You can like always think about the different Xyz you want to go into, and with the synchro monsters, you at first have to hope that you draw like the weird tuner from your main deck, and that's just something in general I don't enjoy as much. Also, like, yeah, the synchro pulls, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like weird to say, yeah, there should be more powerful synchro monsters, like something like Trish, I think, would be really, really cool, because it's like, I think if you want to play a synchro format where just synchros mostly exists, and then having no Trish, like basically the king of synchros, feels kind of weird to me. Like as you see, I'm like coming from the perspective that I'm looking, okay, there was something back in the day, and I want to go back to this point, and then I want to have like the cool stuff from there. And something like Trish lacking, it just rubs me the wrong way. Or something like in the April, better removal would be cool. Something like Scrap Dragon, I guess. But yeah, yeah. Just in general, I think the extra deck in Edison feels like kind of awkward, and it's just a bit too weak for my personal taste. But it's just not fun. Like looking at my extra deck and thinking, yeah, okay, they're like these really, really niche things on the one hand, but also really, really weak cards which shouldn't be there just because like there weren't any better options. And yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way. Talking about these kind of stuff, like in general, I feel there are like a bunch of weird interactions in Edison format in general. Like there are so many interactions which to me personally just feel unnatural. Like in fairies, when you're ramming your shining elves in and so on, until you like grab, for instance, Herald and then go for a synchro monster. I can understand this play, and like it's not something you do all the time. It's an option, but like seeing that this is actually the play, it just feels wrong to me. And so often, like seeing, I think there was one video I watched from E3 where he really, really early in the game basically made the decision, okay, I want to go for a deck out. That's, yeah, I mean, I can see why he's going for that, but I don't want to like go for a deck out that early, or like really stall kind of stuff like with Duplock and so on. Like obviously this is not something which comes up with every deck. There are also like other decks, quite aggressive stuff like Vayu and so on, where these like weird kind of stally stuff doesn't come up, or something like Dragon Turbo. But there are like enough of these decks in the format that, yeah, it just feels weird to me personally playing Edison. Yeah, and talking about like playing weird, I think you can say like the decks in Edison feel weird to me, to be like make a more general point. I can admit that because those decks are like really weird, in a context like of general Yu-Gi-Oh! If you see like all of the innovation which happened in Edison, basically none of these decks have anything to do with historical decks, I think. It's like cool and it is very creative, and Edison, you can say, is like really underdeployed still, and there's so much to like discover, which is really interesting from a deck building point of view. But from a playing type of view, it just doesn't feel like real Yu-Gi-Oh to me very often, which I kind of dislike. And just like seeing these weird decks where you're combining two weird strategies, which kind of happens like very often, like Hero Frog and so on. Ah, I don't know. Like I think just from a pure like watching perspective, watching at a deck and like reviewing it and going through, okay, what was the idea? It is really really cool, but from actually like playing it out, it just feels awkward, weird, and often like really random. Which is why I think from a like just watching at the deck list and like a deck building point of view, the format is cool, but yeah, playing wise, I really dislike playing with these kind of decks, which are like quite common in the format. Yeah. What other stuff? Um, the decks, yeah, they feel weird from just how they are composed, but also like the combo decks feel like really fragile, like something like Dragon Turbo and so on, or like the Norley Alice deck. They feel like if they get disrupted at the right point of time, they just die completely, or there are like way too many hands where you just brick and you can do actually nothing. I mean, to a certain extent, because the format isn't that fast oftentimes, it is fine and you can just wait a turn, you have a hand trap and chill. But like looking at it like 5 spell 1 Gauss hand in such in sometimes in these decks it's just feels terrible. They are like decks which I personally don't get that much enjoyment out of playing when they just brick like all of the time. And the like mid-range or control decks also feel like kind of weird. Those are sometimes like not powerful enough to me personally, or just weird. Like I think Vario Turbo is the deck I enjoyed most when I like actually played it. But still, like the deck sometimes just completely escalates, and you can actually like OTK your opponent on your first turn, and then other times you just do like you're preparing kind of setup stuff. And then like another thing which comes up like quite often is that you just make like 1 or 2 beat sticks, hit your opponent for a bunch of damage, and you basically put them on a 2 turn clock. Say if you don't like get rid of this somehow with no monsters in your hand and just a couple of cards in your hand, you will basically just lose. And this is like, it feels like really, really bad to go, okay, I have to out of 1 normal summon more or less 2 monsters which have over 2000 attack, like a synchro and like a triple summon or something like that. And yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe just PTSD for me, like playing Glad Beast and my opponent ending with the beat stick I cannot attack into, and I didn't draw any like stuff to attack over it. But yeah, it just feels weird to me personally. So like to make a close, I think like yeah, Edison is I just didn't enjoy it that much. But I don't want to say with this everybody should stop playing Edison. I think it's a cool thing that Edison is so popular that people are actually starting to play it, make locals for it, and so on. But yeah, like I just get more enjoyment out of other retro formats personally. And one thing I also want to say, I do not think like the statements I made are like absolute. Obviously, there are like always counterpoints, and you can like relative it more. Like there are still like more like archetype decks. Like you have Blackwing in the format and so on, and like I don't have to play combo decks. The floodgates have outs and so on. But and yeah, there are counters to everything. But yeah, in the end, I just don't find the interactions mostly to like out the floodgates and so on that enjoyable. And yeah, it's just personally nothing for me. Yeah, that's basically it.